We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
This week, it's all about messaging and the message. We'll be covering the electric vehicle boondoggle, why the Biden-Harris administration seems to be stuck with a failure to communicate, and what message is the GOP sending with its efforts to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas. You're listening to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's show, we'll be discussing all the aforementioned topics and a lot more. And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. As the cold weather came, it seems that the much-vaunted electric vehicles were not up to the task. Now, what does this bode for an industry that seems to be on its last coal-fueled legs? Well, we have with us today author, farmer, pastor, and national correspondent for LibertyNation.com, Mr. John Clark. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
So, John, you've written extensively on the page of LibertyNation.com, and I do recommend everybody goes there and reads John's fantastic takedowns of what's happening. It's a real, there's a great article he's got out called Who Killed the Electric Vehicle, Who Done It With a Twist, which is fantastic. It's so much fun to read. But, John, we've seen the recent weeks, recent days even, we've had cold snaps that are literally stopping electric vehicles in their tracks. What's going on?
Well, I think a couple of things are going on. One is people are becoming aware of the rather severe and probably insurmountable problems with batteries in cold weather. But the other is this really may be, I think, and I didn't mention this in the article, but this really could be the straw on the camel's back for EV cars, because there's a growing sense that something is wrong and smells in Denmark. And now we find out it freezes too, right in the roadway. This is a serious problem, and a lot of consumers are not going to want this. And I think it's starting a vicious cycle of in prices, and then people don't want to buy a car that's going to lose 30% of its value. And so despite all of the incentives and all the big talk and all the high advertising, it's turning out to not deliver anything like the grand technological promises of utopian travel that were offered to people. And so now I think it's unraveling and fast.
I think you're probably right there, John. So, and the idea that it's this utopian ideal that we'll all be driving electric and the planet will be saved, and it really is. It's a utopian fantasy, isn't it? I mean, it's no coincidence that the word utopia literally means nowhere, right? It's not actually a thing. So let's talk about the batteries that you mentioned there. During the recent cold weather snaps that we saw across not just the United States, but pretty much all over the world, because, you know, we call it, I can't remember what it used to be called before climate change, but it begins with a W, winter. That's the one, winter. Now, what happens to the batteries on these electric vehicles during colder temperatures?
Well, scientifically, science has a way of intruding on utopian fantasies. And scientifically, all batteries slow down. The transfer of ions, I'm not a physics guy, but I did study it. It slows way, way down to the point of actually these vehicles lose about 40% of their energy if their heater is on, particularly. And I've actually asked this for years. I live in a very cold place here in Vermont. Doesn't that mean I have to heat my car as well with an electric battery? Because that could be a real challenge here. And so it slows everything down. It also apparently really adversely impacted the charging stations, Mark. So a normal charging time is an hour or more. People were giving up on charging their vehicles. Some people reported having spent hours ineffectively, literally they won't charge. And if the battery is cold, for the same scientific reasons, it tremendously slows down the rate of charge. So a lot of the initial energy has to go in preheating the battery in order to then charge it. And so if you start compounding all these delays, and especially that's why you see Hertz dropped tens of thousands of vehicles it had bought is its EV fleet, because if you're going on a long trip and you have to stop for 2 or 3 hours every 200 miles, what they call range anxiety, people would like to have convenience as well as climate saving. And I think this raises the broader issue of something Orwell said, and you're hinting at it, that if people really thought about what these utopian ideas were, for instance, opening all borders to solve all the world's problems, he specifically spoke to that. He said if they understand what it would cause, they wouldn't be clamoring for such things. And I think there's a parallel here with the EV cars. They're not delivering and people don't want them.
Yeah, it seems very much one-step thinking that cars are a big polluter. Therefore, if we go to electric cars, there won't be pollution, which is, of course, it's a nonsense, right? Because as you have discussed in your extensive coverage on the page of libertynation.com, quick plug there, these batteries that they're using, now granted, let's be fair to the industry, battery technology will improve, although I wonder how much capacity room for improvement there is on this type of batteries that they're looking at the moment, or that they're using at the moment. But the actual batteries themselves are not exactly what you'd call ecologically friendly, right?
Well, you actually raise a number of issues. That's why I say this is sort of a cascading effect, because people are now a little more, less and less enamored all the time with these promised salvific technologies, because the cold problem follows a growing realization by a lot of people that lithium needs to be mined and batteries need to be disposed of. And you're quite right that even if we do develop technological advances, they are still going to face those problems. Limited resources that generate pollution other than, in addition to CO2 in their mining and manufacturing, and then, well, they don't dispose well, and there don't seem to be these don't seem to be technologically surmountable problems. And when you start adding that, so now they don't even save the climate. You're quite right, and so I think that's why they're starting to leave a bad taste in people's mouth, especially with high price tags, and as we may discuss more, the regressive nature of how they're funded, and then. The big thing is people like convenience, kind of like what Orwell was suggesting. Yeah, I want to help the whole world, but I don't want to give up anything. So it's all nice to ask people to buy an expensive car to save the planet until it doesn't seem to be doing so, and it's really inconvenient and unreliable. People don't want their loved ones stranded on the side of the road in a winter storm.
I'm old enough to remember 2 years ago. I know I don't look that I'm old enough to remember 2 years ago, but I am. When cars were stranded along highways in snowstorms, I think that was 2 years ago, it might have been three, in the United States. And what basically people did was they sat there in their cars for up to 12 hours or so, or even longer in some cases, with the heater on. Engine running, ticking over nicely with the fuel. Sure, it uses some power there, but that's how cars are built. That your engine can keep going for quite a long time. But they sat there and they were there heated because of their car. Now that's just something that is not presently physically possible with an electric vehicle, is it?
Well, I believe it is, but it's probably going to run out of energy sooner.
Yes. Sorry, that was my meaning. It's not possible to for such a long period of time, like 12 hours or 14 hours.
Yeah, because the cold and the heaters also reduce the efficiency of gas-powered vehicles as well, but not as much. Yes. And apparently with EVs, the batteries start to lose their efficiency once they drop below 68 degrees, according to what I studied. The optimal range is 68 to 86 degrees, which is a very nice California temperature. So they've sold a lot of these vehicles and put in a lot of charging stations in a warm climate. And now they're finding, gee, it was supposed to be for the whole world. I guess they're not going to do well in Alaska. You sure want to hesitate to buy one in Alaska. But now when you're getting bombarded with cold down south, maybe a lot of people are going to hesitate. And then if you study that it actually, they go through tires 30% faster than regular cars. I haven't quite figured out why that is. Then yeah, if you get stranded in a snowstorm, you can stay warmer longer, but also somebody could bring you 5 gallons of gas. And so, by the way, they responded to this by saying future models of the cars will be equipped with chargers so they can rescue one another. And there are some augmentations. Tesla, in particular, has these to extend travel or improve charging rates, but they're still far from solving these problems. But at least we're not in England, where you get stranded in your car if there's like half an inch of snow. It doesn't matter whether it's an EV or a gas.
If there's a heavy rain, the roads flood in the UK, and for some reason, after centuries of having roads, thousands of years even, we still have yet to combat this. Anyway, it seems, John, that there's some technological issues which suggest that there's the push by government to encourage everybody with the electric vehicles. It is a premature push at best. Now, we'll get back to discussing the government, the federal escapades regarding electric vehicles after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.